The St. Louis Blues have played two more preseason games. They've won one and they've lost another. So, how has the team performed as a whole? How have individual players performed? And how is the roster shaping up for the regular season? Alec and I will talk about all that and more today on Note News. It's October. We are finally in a month where we have hockey, regular season hockey starting. We're recording on October 3rd, and 5 days to go. When this comes out, it'll be 4 days to go. Alec, we are getting so close.
I can
It
almost
is
taste it. It's
almost taste it.
we're right there. But the preseason games have been fun. But now that we're starting to think about like lines and pairings and all that, it feels so real and it feels so good to be back.
Yeah, it's within our grasp. It's right there. So we're gonna talk about the Blues' two most recent preseason games against the Chicago Blackhawks and the Columbus Blue Jackets, and uh, all of the implications of those, the performances, and what all those mean for the regular season. But before we do, if you haven't already, we'd really appreciate if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow and rate the podcast wherever you listen. Like this video. It's really all those are the best ways to support Note News as we get ready for the regular season here. And then you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod if you want to follow along there. We've got some cool graphics and posts lining up for the season, and we're really excited to get started. And if we have any exciting news, that's going to be where we announce it. So make sure to follow along there. Let's go ahead and get into it. Alec, do you want to start talking Blues preseason, or do you want to start talking maybe some more like general NHL stuff?
I'm kind of feeling Blues preseason. It's on my mind.
Really, this is designed to be Alec, choose your own adventure. Okay, Alec, let's like you said, start with the Blues preseason. We'll start with Game 4 against the Chicago Blackhawks. Their first win of the preseason, and their only so far. I believe they're playing the Dallas Stars tonight, October 3rd. It's Mean Girls Day. It's October 3rd. Anyways, they're playing Dallas, so they might have another win as of the time that this episode comes out. But as of right now, they've only got the one against Chicago. It was a 3-2 overtime winner. Alec, would you like the good news first or the bad news?
I think there's a lot of good to talk about in this game, so let's get the bad over with.
The bad news is that Pat Maroon scored on the Blues. Weird. I think just all around weird, right? Sad.
Yeah, it didn't look. I mean, he kind of has that like rugged, looks like he would stab you in an alley personality. So the Blackhawks jersey kind of fits him, and it's sickening, honestly.
It's gross. I think we can all agree there. The other bad news is that the Blues, and this has kind of been an issue for them in a lot of their preseason games so far. They just looked slow in general, slow in the defensive zone, really like slow to close those gaps in the D zone. And I mean, it is preseason, of course, and we talked last week how you can't get hung up on preseason win-loss record. It's just preseason; these games don't count towards the record. But I sort of made the case that there are like performance trends that, while they don't count towards your record, they are important. They do matter. You should pay attention to them. Maybe not, maybe not like get all hung up and too worried about them. But I think it's important to keep an eye on that stuff, especially when it's been a chronic issue with the team, like this like sort of lack of speed has been in the past. That's one of the things they tried to address this offseason, bringing in players like Dylan Holloway and Matthew Joseph, players that have some speed, and trying to raise the speed level of the team as a whole. So it is a little concerning when you see the team playing that slow in so many preseason games, and maybe in some part it's the NHL guys kind of easing into it, prepping for the season, not wanting to overdo it or hurt themselves. But I don't know, like what do you think of that sort of trend of like sluggish play? It's almost like lethargic is a word that I've seen, and I think is a fair description of like a fair descriptor of how they've been playing. Like, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think this is kind of something that's been maybe emblematic isn't the right word, but very prevalent in Blues hockey, Blues preseason hockey specifically for some time now. Is it just seems like they don't really take the preseason very seriously in terms of like game speed. It's mostly a way to test out line combinations. Just watching the games, it feels like they'll play half their shifts really hard, and then half of them are just to like work out the kinks of getting back into skating or, you know, completing passes or whatever it is. And yeah, that's a little bothersome, a little worrisome. So I kind of go both ways on it. I think that they can, and I believe that they will. And I think, like, I believe that they will pick up the pace once the regular season starts. And I think there's some actual grounds to hold on that rather than just I trust them because we've seen this happen before. And, sometimes they've been able to pick it up. Sometimes they just got in their own way early in the season, like in 2023 and the start of last year. But um, I guess that's the other part of it too, is the Blues have kind of usually been a slow start team, which isn't, exciting when you have all these young players you are, um, trying to evaluate and maybe don't have a ton of
Mhm.
time to do so. So it definitely is worrying. But as I said, I also do believe that there's a lot of veterans on this team that just take time to get back into game speed and also don't want to risk. We've got some injury prone players too. Shen missed a decent bit of time last year. Falk misses games every year. Um, so I think there is an element of just making it to the season that I think will be better once we get in season, but I agree with you too that we can have sort of a more nuanced discussion than just it's preseason, it's fine because it is a little
Yeah.
worrying. And this is the Blackhawks and the Blue Jackets. So
Yeah, it'd be one thing if they were like looking slow compared to like all of these like high level teams like the Stars, which
even the
they have lost
Stars,
to.
yeah.
But like when you're losing twice to the Blue Jackets in preseason, even if you're mixing in a lot of your young guys, I feel like you should at least be more competitive in those games. And like didn't they lose their first game 3-0 to the Blue
Yep.
Jackets? Like so now they've been outscored 6-1 by the Blue Jackets in the preseason. And again, it is preseason and it doesn't count, but like you'd like to think that the Blue Jackets being a rebuilding team, like even if we're playing a lot of our young guys, we'd still be able to compete a little better. But I mean, it is just preseason, so if this continues to be like a trend and a concern as we get into the season, we can have a separate discussion. But
Yeah.
hopefully they'll start to shake off the rust here, and it hopefully it is just a matter of them easing back into it, which we'll talk a little bit later about Drew Bannister's thoughts on that. But hopefully they'll be able to pick it up once these games start to count. Um, did you get the bad out of your system? Do you want the good news now?
I think so. Yeah, I think I'm ready for some good.
All right, good news. Dylan Holloway. I think he is the goodest
Oh
news.
yeah. Oh
That
yeah.
boy go that boy go real fast. He he in game 4 against the Chicago Blackhawks, he was, I think it's safe to say, like the star of the game, right? He had 2 goals, including the overtime winner. He had a just an all around great game. 4 shots on goal, 3 blocks, 2 hits, 1 takeaway, 4-3-2-1. Just a solid game from Dylan Holloway. Like I said, he scored the OT winner, and in 3-on-3. He also had the Blues' first goal of the game, which was in the third period, and was, by the way, assisted by both Joseph brothers, which is pretty cool. Um, but like this is why I think he can make the second line. I've sort of been making the case ever since the offer sheet move was like finalized that I think he starts on the third line, probably like the third line left winger. But I think by the season's end, if he can continue to impress like this, then he's a second line player for sure for the Blues. Maybe not on like again the Oilers where they're so stacked, but like for where the Blues are right now, I think he could easily be a second line player. So what do you make of Dylan Holloway's game in this one against Chicago?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say with the one guy that they have, although he didn't have an awesome time, but Dylan Holloway looked like, if not the best player on the ice, then the second best player on the ice. That was a really, really encouraging performance for something that I don't want to say he needed, but like for him to go out, geez, for him to like come out and look this good this quickly is, yeah, just super, super encouraging. Um, and I mean, he was all over. He did. It was like, it really does look like he's taken that like step that he had in the playoffs last year and just made that his entire NHL profile. Like it looks like he's taken every part of um, what he learned from the playoffs and just decided that that's who he's going to be forever for the rest of his career, which is crazy. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he looked so good and just so excited to. I mean, I wouldn't say I was a Dylan Holloway hater, but I think I pushed back a little bit on just this guaranteed idea that he was going to be exactly everything that he could have been in those like very small sample size. Um, and I'm fully prepared to eat crow on that right now. Like he looks incredible. So I am so in on Holloway and what he can be for this team. And yeah, I think they should give him looks up the line.
Yeah, and I don't want to be like that kind of homer where we're like, it is preseason, like maybe we shouldn't like be too concerned with this poor performance and then be like, look at this great performance. We should,
That's true.
uh, care a lot about that. I think, when we're talking about Dylan Holloway's performance in the preseason, it is important to say it is just preseason, and it is against like the Chicago Blackhawks. So, but I think the potential, like that's what he's flashing. And it's not like he's going to perform this way all the time against every team. But like, I think he's the fact that he's flashing that potential is really exciting. Um, Scored 2 goals. He almost scored the overtime winner like several minutes before or something like that. So had some really good looks. Like I said, 4 shots on goal, and really just like a solid all around game. Like I said, he had those 3 blocks, a couple hits, and a takeaway too. So solid game defensively. And
Mhm.
I think you know we say, well, it's against the Blackhawks, so maybe we shouldn't, you know, uh, take put too much stock in it. But like one facet of the game that I thought he showed was speed. And I think that's something that I think you can, Blackhawks or not, preseason or not, can look at and be like, that's pretty cool, because that's one of the reasons they brought him in, was to help make the team faster. And looking at him like in 3-on-3 was really exciting. I think he performed really well. And again, I think he starts on the third line, and I think it would take some time for him to work his way up. But I think second line is completely within the realm of possibility. I'll said it before. I'll say it again. Do you want to talk now about your guy? Let's talk about Alexandre Texier. This is your boy, Alec. Maybe not like Jake Neighbors level. Definitely not Jake Neighbors level. But
No.
ever since the Blues brought him in, how did we get him for a fourth round
This is
draft
what
pick?
I was saying, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Like, so why don't you take it on this one? Talk about Texier's performance in this game. What did you see? What did you like? Yeah, take it away. I'm
This is
always
exactly what I was saying when we got Texier is how did the Blue Jackets agree to this trade? Because
yeah.
this is the kind of player he could be. He's always, to me, his like analytics and statistics haven't looked good, but like when you watch him play, there's just so many things about, first of all, his play that like stood out from a lot of Columbus Blue Jackets. And secondly, like a lot of his like bad defensive metrics or whatever looked uh like there was just so much wrong going on in Columbus. So, it's hard
Right,
to not
right,
just sound like an apologist saying this, but like he has such a fun profile that was just like chained down in Columbus, playing with, Boone Jenner's a good player, but he's like pretty slow. It's not someone that you can create a lot of explosive offensive with. It has to be a lot more methodical. And I don't really know that that's ever going to be a part of Texier's game, although he does have a nice shot too. So, maybe if he can set up as sort of that offensive sniper or shooter role. But yeah, I mean, he is so fun flying around the ice and yeah, I like to see him shooting more. I think that's something that feels like he always wanted to do, but they were trying to coach out of him in Columbus. And now I
mm,
think the Blues do need people to fire pucks at net. I think we get a Blues fans will probably agree that sometimes they can get a little pass happy. And I like that Texier, especially um, down the depth chart, like we really do need just pucks on net essentially.
yeah,
Now there is a case as to whether or not he should be down the depth chart. I don't know that I would say he's looked quite as good as like first line play, but bottom nine, honestly, put him wherever has the best chemistry. If he's on the second line to start the season, I mean, I'm not going to be upset because I get to watch more Texier skate. But yeah, I have been on the Texier train, and I'm so like here for his emergence with a young team that I think really complements his style of play, and that's only going to help him like give that back or pay it forward to the Blues. Sort of, it's a very mutually beneficial situation for Texier, and I'm so excited.
for sure. Yeah. This was his first game as a Blue, and he looked awesome. Like you said, he was shooting a little more. He had 7 shots on goal, which led the team for this game. He had a couple hits, a couple blocks, and he assisted the OT winner for that Holloway goal in overtime. Texier go fast. That boy fast too.
Texier go fast,
Um,
yeah.
so I mean, that's like I said, they were trying to get faster this off season, and um, bringing in Texier was a another way to do that. So that's awesome. We'll talk a little bit more about like line combinations, line construction later on, and where we think maybe these guys should go. But let's sort of carry on for this game 4 against Chicago Blackhawks. Another good thing, another good solid player performance. Nathan Walker, who he scored. Excuse me, scored the second goal, also in the third period to tie it. It was kind of like really like a grinding kind of play. Like he had to really like work it in, almost maybe pushed kind of poked Mrazek in the goalie, kind of pushed him into the goal, and I think sort of what we're seeing from him is a player who doesn't quit, and he really wants to make it onto the team. He wants to be on the ice. I think that's really apparent in his game. I think he could work his way into the bottom 6, maybe as like a fourth line center, maybe somewhere on the wings down there. He was 5 of 8 on the faceoff, which was you know solid, decent. So like any quick thoughts on Nathan Walker? Do you think he could play his way in?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nathan Walker's performance was just a very Nathan Walker performance. This is
Yeah,
the way that he plays. It's very fun, especially for such an undersized guy. Like he's so scrappy. Um, it's kind of adorable. Um, but I think of all of the like bottom of the depth chart sort of roster guys, I think Walker is one of the longer ways to go in terms of making this team. As in, I think there's a lot more going against him than some of the other guys, just because he's much older. I want to say he's 28 now, although I'll look that up real quick. But excuse me, I do think that there's a lot more going against him. He's 30. Also, I'm not really sure too because of his size. That I don't know that I could see him in as a center. He's
Mm-hmm.
5'9", so my height. I'm very familiar with how tall he is. Um, my short king, my short Australian king. But I think he plays best when he can play fast, when he can back check, and when he can throw pucks on goal. Because he's got a nice release. Actually, that's like the best thing about him as a player is like shot release is so kind of uniquely quick that it's super deceptive for goalies, and it really the stars kind of have to align for him to like get a good look, get good timing, and sort of fool the goalie in that way. But when it all comes together, it's kind of like tilt your head like, oh, okay, Nathan Walker. But yeah, I think in terms of the depth chart, I think there's a lot more guys who the Blues want to give run before him. I think there's a lot more guys that fans would want to see get more run than Nathan Walker. So if Nathan Walker is on this team in any capacity, I think it's probably sort of like a mid-season injury call-up, or if like, into 2025, just these young players are not producing, then you can get a vet like Nathan Walker in there, and that's fine. I am a big fan of his game, as I mentioned. It's just he is what he is. He'll get you, if he had a full season's load of games, he might net 15 points. So he is
Yeah.
what he is.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see how Drew Bannister wants to use him, but he continues to work and grind. A few more some last notes on the good news, the good side of the Chicago game. 3-on-3 looked great in overtime. Holloway and Texier especially looked good, as I said.
Yeah.
You know,
Holloway looked so good in overtime.
yeah. So maybe the Blues won't be too bad in 3-on-3 play this upcoming season. Last year they had like 6 overtime losses, I believe. So you convert a few more of those and get a few extra points. That can go a long way. Let's see what else. The faceoff percentage continues to improve. We talked sort of early on after the first 3 games about how their inability to win faceoffs was a concern. In this Chicago game, they won 50.9% of the faceoffs, so they had a very, very slight edge, but it's definitely an improvement. So that looks better. And then Colton Ellis, he looked good again. We've talked about how goalie performance has been a highlight of the Blues preseason. He stopped all 11 shots he faced in the third period and in overtime. So that was really encouraging. He was sent down, and I believe like the latest batch of roster cuts. So he and we didn't really expect him to take over like a backup spot or anything like that. But it'll be exciting to see if he can make himself relevant. I think in the AHL this year, maybe challenge Zherenko for that number 1 goalie spot in Springfield, which would be really cool. But any notes on sort of 3-on-3, the faceoff percentage, or Colton Ellis before we talk about the next game?
I think just me singing more praises for Dylan Holloway. He looked so good in overtime that honestly, I'd like to see him out on the first line in overtime. I say, why not? Like,
Yeah,
his game is really it almost looks like it's like tuned for that. Yeah, and Texier too. So that could be maybe not an identity, because I don't know how you hope you're not taking teams to overtime too much, but if it happens, which probably could happen because we've seen the Blues have somewhat struggled scoring goals so far. So yeah, overtimes could be a real possibility, and I do like that this team looks like it can hang essentially when we get there.
for
And
sure.
I'm interested to see the season Colton Ellis has. I think he's put his name on the map more. And he's at a good level of hockey to prove what he's got. So can the Blues goalie factory continue? That would be cool. But
Yeah.
I don't have much else to say. Just I think he
Yeah.
had a as good a preseason as you could hope for about.
For sure. Definitely encouraging play from him over the past few games. Let's talk now about game 6 of the preseason. This was against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Another loss, 3-1 this time. I'll ask you again. Would you like the good news first or the bad news first?
We can just go the same order.
Bad news first. Bad news is pretty similar. Slow play, sluggish, lethargic. They did not look too good. And this time, I would say that Drew Bannister was obviously not happy with their performance. I wouldn't say he's like panicking or anything like that, but I think it's pretty clear that he's a little bit frustrated with some of their play. We posted it on our socials yesterday, but he sort of thought that after that game, they took a step backwards after taking a step forwards against Chicago. Didn't think they were driving enough plays, things like that. They didn't really have like much compete, like if any, which is a little disappointing. So any notes to add, sort of in addition to this like bad news that is sort of consistent over both of these games?
Just the lack of offense is really worrying, honestly. And this is one where I'm really not going to say it's preseason because, it's not just like the guys are going out there just to check all the boxes. Like they want to play the game. And in the preseason so far, the Blues have scored like 5 goals, 6 goals, maybe a little bit more than that, but not. That's like a goal per game. That's terrible. That is an awful, awful average. So I hope they pick it up. The goal in this game was really nice on the power play, and yeah, it looked really cool. It was fun. It was a fun moment to watch, but just the rest of the game was so slow and bland, and against the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are going to mostly be playing a lot of their everyday guys, but
Mm-hmm.
no, I think, yeah, just same conversation here. It's worrying,
Yeah.
and I hope they turn it around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think like one of the concerning things that you see, at least in this game, is like we've talked about how a lot of those lower pair defenseman jobs are kind of up for grabs, and we've got a lot of names sort of in the mix between Ryan Suter, Matthew Kessel, P.O. Joseph, Scott Perunovich is one who like really needs to stand out to stay relevant. Tyler Tucker. I think those are sort of the main guys in the mix, but like no one is really like taking it. Like no one is really standing out and showing out. Like you would really like to see someone with as much potential and sort of like, I mean, I guess, yeah, pedigree as Scott Perunovich. Like you'd like to see him like I just want to shake him and be like, dude, come on, like
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he was so exciting coming up, and I would love if he could unlock something, but no one is really taking advantage of it. Like one thing that I thought was a little disappointing, like Tyler Tucker had a couple careless penalties, which led to the game tying power play goal. He had another I think it was like an interference penalty that led to another power play, and yeah, just like careless play from the young guys and stuff like that. So anything you wanna add on sort of these lower pair defensemen?
I agree with what you said. Just like Perunovich is, yeah, not been good. And he's had a lot of run now. Like this kind of feels like his clock is ticking fast. It sounds like maybe he's gonna start the season, but I don't know how many games he's gonna stick there. I think Ryan Suter's probably quickly closing in on that starting spot.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the guys like Suter too, so that's I guess good. Um,
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah,
the job belongs to Suter at this point.
yeah. Honestly, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that's the call you have to make. It's just
Well, right. Like no one else is standing out.
yeah. So it's frustrating for sure. But I think it's a little bit less worrying because this is like the third pair D D-men we're talking about.
Hmm.
This is the bottom of the roster.
Yeah.
So not having that figured out, especially for a team that isn't like, I mean, even some of the best teams in the NHL don't have like the third pair D-men as a strength. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I think the level of play it shouldn't be abysmal, which is something. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
you
think I
definitely would like. Yeah,
yeah, I think where I'm at with it is like the Blues have an obvious strength for the future, which is their forward depth, right? They've got a lot of exciting names like Neighbors and Holloway now, and obviously Snuggerud and Dvorsky coming up soon, and so there are exciting names in the forward group. But like one of the things they are most snake bitten by, especially in recent years, and looking into the near future as well, is these long term contracts to defensemen that are um, a lot older and obviously won't be around for once the retool is over, right? And it's like you'd really love to see at least one of these young defensemen sort of make a case for himself and emerge as like a legit option for the long term. I'm not expecting all of them to do it. I just would like for like one of them to do it. It
yeah,
would be nice if we could sort of start to remedy this chronic issue that the Blues have. Um, but enough on that. Let's talk about the good news. You want to do that?
yeah.
Let's do
Let's
that.
do palate
And
cleanser.
a palate cleanser. Surprisingly, I think the goodest news from this game did come from defensemen. Um, I know we were just kind of bashed on sort of the state of the the state of the blue line in St. Louis, but Justin Falk, he scored the only Blues goal in the game. He continues to shine as the power play quarterback for the first power play unit. So I think that's encouraging. He had that slap shot goal. I think it was moved around. It was like Thomas to Neighbors to Falk, and he buried it. But um, he had a couple great passes to set up shots from Robert Thomas and Brandon Saad like earlier in the game to spring those guys, and they both missed. But um, you know, he's looking healthy. He's looking good. What do you make of Justin Falk on the power play? And are you a little bit more encouraged by the performance of the power play in the past couple games? I know we talked after the first three. That was like one of your big concerns was especially the power play.
Hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that now?
I'll start there because I'll get the bad over with first. I still think it's a little bit worrying. I'm still not really like convinced. They've certainly looked good, and I think Falk has looked amazing on the power play, but I still don't know that we have like a real sniper who can get those one time like who can bury those one time looks. And if that has to be Justin Falk from the point, then I guess, but that isn't really how you run a um, super successful power play. So it's looked better for sure, but I still don't know that I see it as very high upside. I guess the hope is that their floor can be, not bottom of the league. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe they've shown that. I think I'm still holding out my judgment there. But Justin Falk has been awesome. And it
Hmm.
really honestly like excuse me, even if Torrey Krug were still playing on the roster, I honestly think Falk looks better now than Torrey Krug did all of last year as the first power play quarterback. So I think that this like almost forcing the Blues' hand like has led them to making an upgrade to the team, and Falk is taking to that role. So I think the early signs from Falk is that he's going to have a solid year,
Hmm.
and can maybe step up like we and I know you've been especially calling for and asking him to.
Hmm.
So that looks exciting.
For sure.
And yeah, that goal was just it was so sweet. it was
Yeah.
one of those you just
Yeah,
beauty.
for sure. Yeah, it was. It was nice. I think like the big question with him is can he stay healthy and continue to perform sort
Yeah,
of
right.
well all season? So if he can do that, I think the power play could be a lot better. But real quick, like just first name that comes to mind, if he goes down, like who do you want to take over that spot?
Pareko, unless Broberg shows more, maybe.
Hmm.
I mean, Pareko is a good passer. He's mostly a good passer in space, but he's responsible and
Hmm.
not too slow.
Yeah,
But if Broberg shows a little bit more, I think he could. I still don't
yeah,
really know how he fits in offensively with the team, but defensively he's looked pretty good.
yeah. Yeah, speaking of Philip Broberg, I think he's another one of the highlights of this game. He had a couple solid hits from what I saw, and looked good. He had one play where he skated the puck all the way up the ice, had a shot on goal, and missed. But um, it was cool to see him skate well and skate around some players. Um, I'm just trying to take some positives away here, man.
No, it's
But
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm ever the optimist, so I gotta do something. And
I
I'm
mean, he
really
looked good.
yeah. I think he does look good. I think there was like a little bit of him trying to like I don't know show out. I guess I don't know, but because that was in St. Louis, right? This yeah, it was a no. Wait, was it?
Uh, I'm
Yes,
pretty sure.
it was. It was in St. Louis. Um, I think there was like a little bit of maybe him trying to show out in front of the home crowd to some extent, um,
Sure.
but if he can be a solid skater from the blue line, I think that's encouraging. Joel Hofer was also a bright point for this. I mean, we've it's been a highlight for pretty much all the games that they've played so far, all five. But he played the entire game, except for like a couple minutes at the end where they went empty net. And by the way, like one of the Blue Jackets' three goals was an empty netter at the end there.
Mhm.
Like I think like right as time was expiring too. So, but Hofer had 32 saves, a save percentage of 941. So really solid game, and let in a couple goals, but gave the Blues a chance, and that's all you can ask for from a goalie.
Mhm.
So super encouraging. A couple other notes: the faceoff percentage looked a lot better in this one. Trying to find the number real quick, but the Blues won 58.9% of faceoffs in this one. So a big step forward in that regard. So hopefully that can continue to be progressing in the right direction. Um, any notes on those last few things, those last few aspects of good news about this game?
I think the face-off thing is another thing that I'm still not really bought in quite on yet.
Hmm.
The Blue Jackets are a team that really lacks good center play.
Yeah.
So it's also preseason, so I still think that's probably going to be a way that teams can exploit that. And actually, we saw that in this game, as they had sort of I don't want to call it a trick play, but just a quick play off of the draw. They won the
Hmm.
faceoff and fired a puck on net, and yeah, found the back of the net. So
Hmm.
um, I think there's a lot of areas on the margins that the Blues have shown that they need to improve. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I do think Hofer looked really good. He looks not like year two Billy Huso, who when he went to Detroit was just terrible. Looked slow, and I think Hofer is still like his some of his sort of I don't want to call it intangible, but like that almost instinctual reactions maybe aren't there, but like the mental side of his game and his technique are really good. So, anyways, long story short, Hofer looks like Hofer, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. One interesting note, like about these two games in particular, in that 3-2 win against the Blackhawks, the Blues outshot Chicago 35-23, and then in the loss to the Blue Jackets, they got outshot 35-23. So, hey, what do you know? You shoot more, you score more. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Um, sorry to bring advanced analytics in there, but I hope. I hope I was making sense. Um, cool. Do you wanna move on to some more like general Blues talk?
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that I've noticed, at least in like reports following these games, is like it seems like Bannister's like a little frustrated. I think he's saying the right things, like you know, talking about how players are kind of playing like they're trying to ease into it, and he doesn't want to see that. He wants to see someone take some steps forward. He seems to be mixing up some lines in practice, even in games a little bit. Is there anything that you would make of that? Like, am I putting too much stock in that? I mean, he seems frustrated. It is just preseason, like we've said like a million times. But is there, anything to pay attention to there?
I I think I like the fire from Bannister early. I like what he's shown, but I'm not putting quite as much stock into it. I think it is preseason, and like he I think mostly the coaching job is sort of what I'm looking at, and the coaching job is a little bit what worries me.
Hmm.
Not the coaching job. Maybe it really is just players are not playing hard, and I think that's fair. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I that's another one where I'm still a little bit holding it or reserving my judgment until we get like 3-5 games in.
yeah.
Um, so yeah,
I like to see him, caring about it. Like
yeah, exactly.
I think he's saying the right things for sure. So um, excited to see what a full season of Bannister looks like. Let's talk about some line structure and combinations, things like
Hmm.
that. A lot of people I've been seeing in like I don't know social media comments, things like that. Um, think that maybe Thomas and Kyrie should be on separate lines, and I mean that's something that they've done in the past. There's precedent for that for sure. I've been like a proponent that they should be playing on the same line. I think Kyrie's scoring potential on a line with Robert Thomas's playmaking ability is if they can figure that out. I mean, like it would be great, and I would love for them to try to like let them run with it and try to figure it out in a season where there's not like Stanley Cup hopes or anything like that. Like it would be nice if they could make the playoffs, but like it's not like they're playing for a Stanley Cup. So I feel like why not let them try to figure it out? Um, a lot of people think if you split them up, you can maximize their separate abilities on two lines instead of just one, and I think that's a fair argument. But here's where I have a concern: is if Kyrou, for example, plays on the wing on the second line, right, and Buchnevich is playing center on the second line, then who takes over that top line wing spot? So like, what are your thoughts on splitting up Thomas and Kyrou, and then like who would like would we move Shen to center and move Booch up? Like what would be the answer there?
This is one of the more divisive issues in Blues fandom, I think. And it's kind of been a talking point for a while now. I'm with you. I'm in the camp that I do think Thomas and Kyrie should play together. I think Kyrie clearly plays better with Thomas, and it's not to say that he needs Thomas, but this guy, when things are right, is one of the most talented players on the ice in any game that he plays.
Yeah.
And things are right when he plays with Thomas. So it makes the most sense that you'd want to just have them. Also, like, you gave them matching contracts. They're supposed to be the young players you build around. I really think they should just try and at least commit kind of, and not like keep
Hmm.
moving them around. But yeah, so I'm with you that I think he should stay on the top line, because the other one too is like, in that case you'd probably, excuse me, geez, you probably have Jake Neighbors play on the top line, and then
Hmm.
you elevate a guy like Dylan Holloway, maybe, who's shown a lot, could be, and I think that's
Yeah,
another talking point, maybe.
for sure.
But yeah, I think Kyrou to me feels like a top liner, and I think just should play with should play with Thomas.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Sort of on a similar note, we talked last week. That was last week, right? Where we talked about our thoughts on Buchnevich playing center.
Hmm.
Um, one thought that I had that I wanted sort of to throw into the discussion. We talked about like who plays on a line with him, and one of our sort of concerns about his game was um, his face-offs, right? I think if they play like Shen on the wing, and Shen could take some of those face-offs, like I think that could be a cool answer. And we talked about how like Shin and Saad would likely be some solid wing options for him, to have those like experienced players up there. I'd really like to see like Shin on the wing. I think that's what I want to see. And then on the other side, I would love to see like a mix of Dylan Holloway, Bolduc, all kinds of names mixing in and out. But what are your thoughts on sort of like having like that Shin Buchnevich combo sort of like share the center duties almost, even though Buchnevich would be like the center? What do you think there?
I think that's fun, and I think it could work. As long as I think Shen kind of is playing for a second line roster spot in that like he has to fight for it, like, and he has to
Yeah,
defend. I think he has it right now, but I think he has to defend it from
yeah,
guys like Texier, Holloway, or whoever else might emerge in season. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we'll talk about Holloway and Texier in a second. But sort of as a bit of a segue to that note, would you rather have like Shin be the 3C and then like Faxa be the 4C, or would you rather see Shin on the wing, and then Texier in center? Like, what would you rather see?
I do like Texier as a center, but I think probably it's something that you have to try both and just see what
Yeah,
sticks.
yeah,
But I like Texier as center. I don't know. I think there's
yeah.
a chance for higher upside, even if the floor is also lower.
I think if he can like work his way into like the 3C spot, I would say that would be awesome. But if he's going to be like a 4C, I would rather see him like higher up in the lineup on the wing than
Mm-hmm.
like super low playing center. But let's talk a little bit about Holloway and Texier. In practice yesterday, Dylan Holloway was playing on the top line with Robert Thomas and Jake Neighbors, and then Alexander Texier made his way all the way up to the second line with Buchnevich and Kyrou. Like, what do you think of those combos? That's a mix up. Like, it seems like Drew Bannister is really trying to show the team like, giving credit to these players that are like working their tails off and playing well, giving them meaningful looks on top six lines. So is there anything we can make of these guys playing on those elevated lines, or is it just something that they're trying out?
I think you actually can take a lot from this. I think Holloway too is especially even like if you think about this decision being sort of an overpay, if he ends up playing like up the depth chart, then it really ends up kind of not being an overpay. And Holloway, yeah, Holloway just looks, as we've said so many times, looks so good, is meshing so well with this team that I think he legitimately can take a step into being a top six forward. I think he still has to sort of earn his way onto that, but I do think there's a lot of promise. And yeah, I think Texie, I'm not so sure about. Texie, I think is kind of maybe a preseason thing, although it'd be fun.
Yeah.
Um, I still think Texie has to show a lot more completeness, and I too think, yeah, he just isn't quite where you'd want like a second line guy to be. But Holloway, I think, is almost feels a little bit like last year, Jake Neighbors. Maybe that's a little bit too. I guess
Yeah.
Holloway's had more of a run, but maybe not though. He's out playing American Hockey League a lot. I don't know. I think there's something there, and we saw Jake Neighbors playing on the top line by the end of the season, so it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see, in a year that's clearly still part of the retool. Excited to see what sort of mixes and matches and fun combos the team can come up with, and maybe get some extended looks at these guys and see what they can unlock. So I think that's going to do it for us on this episode of Note News. We are going to cover the final two games of preseason against the Dallas Stars and the Chicago Blackhawks. So we'll do another episode covering those. And we'll do some season preview stuff. The season is starting really soon, October 8th against the Seattle Kraken. And so we're really excited to get the NHL regular season started, our first inaugural Note News Blues season. So if you're enjoying Note News, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow the podcast, rate it wherever you listen, like this video, and follow along with us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. That's really the best way to follow along. If you want to check out any of our cool off-season content, we did a lot of cool like concept episodes. Check that out on our YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. So we really appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time on Note News. And of course, let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.